Hello, parents and teachers who may be watching. Welcome to Creating Math Ahas for Parents. I'm Dr. Sandy Atkins, Sandy, and in this video, we'll look at the way in which we help your child understand multiplying fractions less than one. So each fraction is less than one. Now, one material or a model that you may see your children using as they're learning about fractions would be a fraction kit. This is a typical one that I do with students when I'm working with them. Um, Usually we start this in grade 3, use it in grade 4, grade 5, but you can see I have a whole 2 parts, the halves, the thirds, the fourths, the 6, and the 8s. And these are construction paper. These are 1 inch wide, 12 inches long. And the key when we're working with your child is really emphasizing equal pieces, that they get a strip of paper, they must fold it into 2 equal pieces. Use all of the strip, because some of your children will want to trim off some of the pieces that don't look quite right, but they've got to use all of the strip because this is an area model. These have to fit on top of here. You know, typically I don't go to 3 equal pieces next. I go to 4 equal pieces because to make the 4 equal pieces, we can take half of the 2 equal pieces. That's going to be helpful when multiplying fractions. And then I go to 8 equal pieces. Then we go back and do 3, and from 3 we do 6, we may do 12. So this is a kit that your children may be using. It's one that we use early on to help them, again, look at relationships of the sizes of the pieces. When the denominator, when you fold it into more pieces, like a 6, it doesn't get bigger like whole numbers, they get smaller. So we're using all of that. I want to show you these because we'll use this a bit, as I said, with multiplying fractions, and we'll also use the idea of finding any starting whole separating into 2 or 4 or 3, 6, 8 equal pieces, or any number of pieces. So we're going to use both of those ideas. Now, I want to start with what I was talking about with the kit. And if you've looked at some of the other videos we've done, I emphasize language, right? The use of language. So I could read this using what I would call a symbolic language. Just name the symbols. 1/2 times 1/3. That is perfectly correct. Nothing wrong with that, except it doesn't help me with some of the imagery. See, to me, I want to use a language that helps them understand what the symbols represent, which helps me get a picture in my mind of what I'm doing. It's not just symbol straight. See, if I see this and I'm trying to remember back to when I learned this, I'm trying to remember, oh, you multiply the numerators, you multiply the denominators. It's very rule focused. But see, if I use what we talked about, I use the conceptual language, and I ask your child, what's half of 1/3? See, I'm folding that third piece into 2 equal pieces. What's half of 1/3 is 1/6. I could do the same thing. I could do half of 1/4. What would that size piece be? What would be 1/3 of 1/2? Well, here's my half size piece, and if I put into 3 equal pieces, what is that? Now you see, once I use the language, and I get this relationship of the pieces, well, then I can start to play with, well, 1/2 of 1/3. Notice how I still read it as 1/2 of 1/3 is 1/6. 1/2 of 1/4 is 1/8. 1/3 of 1/2 is 1/6. And now we start to ask your child, tell me about the patterns you notice. See, the rules come from the patterns. I start to see, oh, well, the numerator is just this. Well, okay, what if we did 2/3 of 1/2? So I have my 1/2 piece. I've divided it into 3 equal pieces, 1/3, right? But I want 2/3 of that. Well, how much do I have here? 2 1/6 pieces. Now see, you start to add on. I can ask them later, what's another name for that piece? Using fewer pieces for those two. See, fewest number of pieces. That's how I get a simpler form for it. So language is huge, and using the relationship of pieces from the fraction kit, I can do some early introduction of multiplying fractions less than 1. Okay, now the other side that I said for multiplying fractions less than 1 is using the idea that we want them to be able to find a part of any starting whole. So my pieces here that I just used were kind of a long, skinny rectangle that I was doing. But I could also do an oblong that looks more like this. I could do an oblong that's equilateral, otherwise known as a square, right? I could do lots of different rectangular pieces. I could do circular pieces. I could use butterflies if I wanted, and I want them to be able to cut it into equal pieces. Now, I can do things where when we were in school, if we were showing half of something, and I'm going to do a diagonal cut here, if I wanted to show half of something, we use shading to show half, right? I could have cut using a vertical cut. We could actually have your child and get them comfortable with some of this, starting to do things that look even a little more different. They can do things where they have something like this. See, I cut into 2 equal pieces, and then we use the shading. So this is prior to getting to multiplication. This is that introduction, but we use shading. But another way I have your child do this, especially when it gets to multiplication, is we change the drawing from being a solid line to being a dashed line. So what if I draw this rectangle? Okay. I've done the dash and I want to show half of it. I cut it into 2 equal pieces, but then I make it solid. See, the important part of fractions is naming it in relation to the whole. I want to know it in relation to the whole, at least when we're working with areas and things. The whole is how I name it. So when we're going to find half of 1/3, I showed you one way to do it and think about it when you're using the fraction kit. But I want to show you a way when you're using an area model, and this may be something you're seeing your children do. For me, I'm going to start with my whole dashed, and I'll show you what you may be seeing in your children's textbooks or on the pictures that they're drawing. See a little difference for it, okay? And essentially, I think of these as also the dimensions, okay? So I'm going to create where I have half going this way. Okay, so there's my half. And I could shade that in if I want. And then I essentially am doing the thirds this way. And I've got one of them. Now I can think of this as 1/3, half of the third. Okay. So if these are my thirds, I'll show you a different way. Let's try again, huh? Cut into thirds. Right, here we go. Cut into half. half of the third is that, or that. And the key with this is any of these work out. I don't have to just do this top corner. I could have drawn the picture the other way too. Now, what you may see your children doing is something like this, where they start with the solid rectangle, and maybe they cut it into the two equal pieces, and then they'll do a shading using kind of like a diagonal, and then they'll cut the other side into three equal pieces. And they'll shade in a third of it. And it really doesn't matter which of these thirds I shade in. And then where you see the cross hatching is your result right here. So I found for some children, this is difficult to work with. For others, this is a little easier because it's very clear what the end is. But like we did before, so I've got 1/6. I could do the same thing. Let's say we do okay. You can try drawing the picture, pause the video, and try drawing your own picture. If this is my hole, I'm going to cut it into 4 equal pieces. And if your children have been doing this quite a bit, they know to cut in half and then cut in half again. There's my 4 equal pieces. I can shade in or solidify one of them. There's one of the 1/4 pieces. Okay, so that's this part. I can do 2/3, so I'm going to cut this into thirds now. Okay, so I have the thirds, but I want 2/3 of this piece. It's this part of it. Okay, now in relation to the whole thing, well, this is 12 equal pieces, and I've shaded in 2 of them. Okay, the more you do this, the more comfortable you get. Let's try my drawing the other way. 4 equal pieces. Okay, pick any of these as your 4th, and then I'm going to find 2/3 of one of those. I'm going to pick, here's was a 4th, and 2/3 of it is this part of it. I still used, in the end, 2/12. What you may be seeing your children doing again is they're starting with a solid shape. They're cutting it into 4ths, 4 equal pieces, or they could cut into thirds. It won't matter which way we do this, okay? I'll show you that way too. So I'm going to pick this 1/4 piece. Okay, they may be picking always the front one, but that flexibility is important, and it really doesn't matter. I cut it into 3 equal pieces, and I shade in 2/3 a different way, using a cross the other way. Here's 2/3 pieces being shaded in, and do you see where the cross hatching is right there. I still have 2/12. Okay, so we still have the 2/12. If I did it the other way, I can start with the thirds. I could do it with this type of drawing too. I could shade in 2/3, then cut it into 4 equal pieces. Shade in 1/4. Here's your cross hatching. still 2/12. The important thing is once they get comfortable, notice we're giving imagery through the patterns. We're looking at what happens when you multiply fractions less than 1. And then they see, well, it ends up being the product of the numerators and the denominators from that imagery at first. This imagery will become helpful as we get to mixed number. So when they start to use multiply problems like this area model imagery will become important because we're going to get at distributive property again. But the language like we used when we started, half of, is a way to think about, easy for them to find halves and thirds and fourths, and understanding that once you find a third of something, 2/3 is double that, right? 5/3 would actually be 5 sets of that. So we'll start to play around. I hope this helps you understand some of the models your children may be seeing, some of the drawings they're doing to associate that multiplication of fractions with parts of area to start out with. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe so you'll know when other videos are coming available. In the description below, I'll give you a link to the multiplication playlist, which will give you some ideas for multiplying whole numbers and linking that to distributive property. And again, please share with any other parents you know or colleagues you know that might find this helpful. Thanks so much for watching.